Welcome back to another Chatting with Wisdom. And apparently, I am going to. We got disconnected. Oh no. We are not live in all the places.
Uh-oh.
Issue with Facebook. Oh, darn, Facebook. Okay, well, we're going to not go live on Facebook today. I will upload these to Facebook later. So I'm really terribly sorry, Facebook land.
Yeah.
But so we're live on LinkedIn and YouTube and Facebook land. I will have to figure out how come we are not connected. But it didn't give me that error before we started. So anyway, let's go back to welcome back to another Chatting with Wisdom. I am Geegado Megwan, spirit name, which means talking feather woman, also known as Rollie Allaire. I empower women to stand in their truth so that they feel fulfilled and can achieve all their desires. This unscripted weekly interview series is to help support successful women who feel misunderstood and disempowered in their personal relationship and stand in their truth so that they can communicate with confidence. Join me for a Stand in Your Truth call where you'll explore what's blocking you from communicating with confidence in your personal relationship. This week, I'd like to introduce Christy Holt, and we will be chatting about getting unstuck. Christy Holt is a self-proclaimed happiness hussy, coach, podcast host, Create Your Happy Inspiration for Conscious Women, available wherever you listen to your podcasts, and author of Unstuck for Women, available on Amazon, who loves to show people how to get out of their survival mode and so that they can consciously create the happy life, relationships, and impact they desire. Christy is a coach for whole ass humans using her signature create method. She journeys alongside of her soul-led clients to support and love them as they discover and unlearn. Christy's mentorship helps her clients to connect with their soul-aligned desires and become unfuckwithable. I think I pronounced that correctly, so that nothing stops them from making the massive impact they are meant to create. So I love that. I think that that's incredible. And I love that this is all about being able to connect. And the part that I really love about your intro was whole ass humans.
Yeah.
Why do people not think that it's important to be able to deal with the whole ass humans?
Yeah.
And not just like these little itty bitty parts of the human.
Yeah.
Right? I love that. I love that. So
Yeah.
welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
So tell me a little bit about how you got onto this journey.
Oh gosh, where do I begin? Well,
or maybe the Cliff Notes version, if it's not.
I'm going to share a little bit about when I was stuck, because that is ultimately what sort of was the catalyst to this journey I've been on, and one of the pivotal things that have brought me to this place where I am now. And it was about 5 years ago where I really, maybe a little bit longer than 5, I guess closer to 6 now, where I had this pivotal moment where I realized, oh my gosh, it's me. And this realization literally sent me on a whole different level of journey of self-discovery, self-acceptance, self-love. It really honestly affected every area of my life. But I want to back up to before that pivotal moment, because that's where people are finding themselves stuck. And I want to help those people because I was there. I lived stuck for, frankly, way too long, an embarrassingly long amount of time. And I want to help other people, first of all, realize that they're stuck, and also help them to get unstuck in a much more expedient way than it was for me. So what does stuck look like? Well, when I was stuck, I honestly, my thoughts ran out of control. My mind was 1,000 miles an hour all the time, and it created a constant feeling of anxiety and overwhelm. I was overthinking. I was trapped in sort of these thought and emotional spirals. I think that most people know what I'm talking about when I talk about a spiral of thoughts, where one thing just quickly triggers a whole shitstorm, a whole chaos. And it's basically a sufferfest that is due to our own thinking. And so when I was stuck, I felt really, really helpless, to impact my circumstances. I didn't think that things were going to change. I didn't know if it was possible. And partially this was a bit of self-belief that I was lacking, a bit of self-worth, to think I didn't know if I deserved those things on some level. And so I kind of stayed stuck. And the truth is, the uncertainty was killing me. And I think that a lot of people really resonate with that. When things feel really uncertain, there's a lot of space for fear, anxiety, worry, and this out of control thinking that I was explaining about. It can even feel like the whole world is conspiring against you. And so when I was stuck, I was also in a relationship that felt really difficult. In that relationship, constantly felt like I was both too much and also simultaneously not good enough. And I could not reconcile how the hell to be either of those things, because both of those things had me falling short all the time. I got stuck in this trap, what I call just a momitis, of being a mother first and foremost, which involved a whole lot of people pleasing and overgiving and basically doing everything for everyone else. I honestly lost quite track of who I was. And I think that when we become a mother, we do shift, we do change, we grow and we evolve. So it's not so much an ability to go back, which sometimes we wish, I wish I could go back to who I was before. But the truth is you can't. You can never go back, because becoming a mom forever changes you. And so it's not a going back, but a moving forward and stepping into. And that does require a little bit of unlearning and self-discovery and peeling away the layers of the onion to figure out who you truly are. I mean, the world has really told us who we are oftentimes, and it's a matter of stripping away the half-truths and the completely non-truths and really finding ourselves beneath all of that.
Absolutely. And I love that you mentioned that, because that's one of the things that we hear so often. It's like, well, I'm just a mom, or I'm just a wife, or I'm just a whatever, right? Like in terms of our jobs, like we wear all these labels, and we take on somebody else's perception of who it is that we are and what it is that we do, and that kind of thing. So being able to bring things back into like, who are we, and figuring that out and peeling off those layers, and who do we want to become, right?
Yeah.
Like, just because we have always been like this shy little person doesn't mean that we have to remain that shy little person. We can come out of our shell if we want to. We can step into our power. We can step into who we are, and be able to come out to that you're not just so-and-so's mom. You're not just so-and-so's daughter. You're not just so-and-so's partner. And so just really important for us to be able to do that and look at it from like, okay, who do we want to be, and where do we want to go, and how do we want to do that? And then the other thing that I really like that you were talking about is like all these crazy ideas and thoughts that just keeps feeding all the things that are going on. And then we just stay in that spiral moment of being able to like, well, I can't go into I can't go into that dark hole because, and so you just stay here, because if you go into that dark hole, you don't know what's on the other side. And so, but being able to figure out like, hey, what is on that other side? What might it look like? Right. Yeah. So what can we do as we like kind of merge into that space of like the unknown and become who we want to be, right?
I mean, it's an adventure. Being human is a wild ride at times. Mm-hmm. And ultimately, I wrote my book to help people to shut down the spiral, because I think that when we're stuck in that spiral, I mean, I know, because I've been in that situation too many times, we're not thinking clearly. We are not using our full capabilities. We are often reacting without intention instead of responding with a conscious intention to, show up a certain way or experience something a certain way. So what's happening is we're on autopilot mode. We're not on like I'm creating my life mode. And that's what the book is designed to help people shift into, out of survival and into, creating with purpose, with intention, the life, the experience, the happiness, the joy, the peace, the love, all of the things that you desire You can create them for yourself. And in fact, you're the one who needs to create them for yourself. This was the big aha moment that I had. I was in this relationship with my kid's dad, and it dawned on me that holy shit, like this is me. The struggles that we were having, the miscommunications. I mean, it was him too. I'm just kidding. It was both of us. We're together, right? It wasn't working for either of us. But as long as I stayed stuck, and when I was stuck, I was really focused on, well, this is the problem. And when he changes, and when circumstances change, and in time, and when the kids are older, and all of these things, right? Putting all of the hope and everything outside of myself, I wasn't taking responsibility for my part in it. And so when I had this aha moment, like, holy shit, I'm the common denominator in literally every experience that I'm having. And it dawned on me that that meant I really needed to step up, because until then, I had this idea that staying in my relationship, in my marriage, was protecting my kids. I mean, all parents, they want the best for their kids. They want to protect their kids. Nobody goes into a relationship or having a family with the idea of breaking up your family. And so that weighed heavily on me, until I came to this realization that that wasn't probably what was best for them, because I was completely sacrificing my own needs. I had lost my own voice. And so there was no other way to guide my kids to a life that was fulfilling, happiness, fulfillment, abundance, all of the things that I truly wanted for them, unless I went first, unless I showed them how, unless I led the way by example. And so I made the incredibly hard decision. That uncertainty really kept me from making that decision for a long, long time. It was not a decision I took lightly. And I know people out there, like me, stay in a marriage that's not ideal. It's not good. You're not happy. You're not connected. It was kind of in this place of living out the days, waiting. Well, maybe we'll just stay together until. But that's no way to live. And honestly, I do believe if you've got a nudge in you, like there's something more for you, there's something better out there for you, I just want to tell you to just follow that nudge, because it is the truth. When you're getting that nudge and you're feeling like, gosh, there's got to be something more, there is. I promise it to you. And you're the one who's capable to step up and make that happen for yourself. No one else can do that. Right? So radical responsibility. What am I doing? How do I want to show up? What is it that I want to create in this human life, in this experience, from moment to moment, from here until whatever, until we're done here? There's just so much opportunity. And ultimately, I think most of us play it really safe, and we don't go after the things we truly desire. And the truth is, if we get out of our own way, it's all possible for us. So
absolutely. And that is so important for us to be able to do. And when we're like on the flip side, in terms of like those relationships, because some people are like, yeah, but I don't really want to end this relationship. I really love the person. And not that there is like, so there's not one way or the other that's right or wrong, but just being able to change yourself and shifting. And a lot of times when you change and you shift yourself, then those relationships fall apart anyway, because that one of the things that happens is that you grow, they don't. Kind of thing. So like that's kind of where that evolution is. But sometimes that growing allows them to grow as well. And so then you guys get to flourish together. And so, but when everybody just stays stuck in that space, like there's no way of growth or movement. And so I often hear people as well that actually take that step of stepping away, and then they come back with like, well, they're in a relationship with so-and-so, and like the two of them are like so in love and everything is so great, but like it wasn't with me, and like I don't know what I was doing wrong. And it's like, you weren't. It was about you not being in that space that needed to allow you to be able to grow. And so like there's all these different things that they're, again, going back into our head of all like then they go back into new spirals, and it's like, hey, but where are you at now? What is it that's going on? And how do you want to be able to shift what it is that's going on for you. So I love how you talk about like that unstuckness, and like you're so right. Like you're like, I love the fact that you actually wrote the book that actually reminds people of this, because so many people just think like, well, this is my life. Yeah, I can't really change it. Or
just
maybe
settling,
right? Yeah.
just settling, and that you're meant for more. And so I get really passionate about that when I hear of somebody saying, well, it's not that bad, it could be worse, it could be better. It could be so much better. And I think the truth is it's not that any of that is good, bad, right, wrong. Honestly, we got to get rid of all those judgments, because they don't serve us either. But what we want is an experience that we feel good about, right? Our bodies contain within them, like I like call it an internal barometer, inner barometer. Things that feel good are like, yes, this is for me. And things that are really difficult and feel there's so much resistance and heaviness around and they don't feel good, it's not that they're bad or wrong. It's just not for you, maybe, right? Or not for you right now. Those are just signals to explore maybe different avenues.
Or not for you anymore.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So like that's the other part of it too, is that maybe you did have like all these things that like, so you were in a job that it was like so motivating and so exciting and all these things happen, but then things shift, things change, you shift. And like, so you've got all these things that maybe at the time when you jumped into it, it was like you immediately 100%. And that's another place where people get stuck, right? It's like, but I made this decision to be in this career because I wanted to do X, Y, Z. And it's like, okay, but what did you do? Well, I did X, Y, Z. Okay, so now what?
Yeah.
So
now on to the next.
But, but I worked really hard and I went to school for all this. Okay, so now what?
Well, let me tell you about that a little bit. I can tell you a little bit from my story. I became a professional accountant. That was my please my mom and dad kind of move. And I became a professional accountant. I did not like that job. There was no part of it that I enjoyed. And in fact, I remember the very first week on the job, we were doing some training that involved a personality assessment. And I can't remember which one it was, but I very specifically remember there was like a board and it was colors. So I can't remember which one that is with colors, but I do recall that everyone was in this one quadrant. And then there was me in the far opposite end of the thing. And my quadrant was like bubbly, friendly, outgoing. And the rest of the people in the group were like analytical and black and white thinking and very, very structured like that. And I was like, oh shit, like one of these things is not like the other, if you know what I mean. And I was like, okay. Now, what I did really actually enjoy about that job was interacting with other people. I really thoroughly, my favorite parts of that were actually mentoring other students, teaching, bringing new people into the firm, that kind of stuff, which unfortunately wasn't terribly recognized or appreciated in the accounting firm because it's not billable time. But for me, that was the kind of using my gifts that I wanted to do. Yeah. And so when I had my kids, I left accounting. That's a story for another day. Did not want to go back. And the universe aligned things perfectly for me in a way that did not feel good at first, tell you that. But in retrospect, I can see that the path was playing out exactly the way that it was supposed to. And once I got past the initial shock of what all kind of transpired, I realized this is exactly what I actually wanted. And so I didn't end up returning to that firm, to that job. And I kind of took a little bit of a hiatus. I became a fitness and nutrition coach for about 5 or 6 years. Then the pandemic hit. And then I thought, oh my gosh, everything I've built with this now is kind of crumbled under the new restrictions. I had spent years building up, my business so that I had a nice solid schedule of clients and classes and all of these things. And that was wiped out, one Sunday afternoon sort of situation. And so I pivoted again and, really took that opportunity to do a little bit more self-exploration and really lean into some parts of that I really wanted to get a little bit more familiar with and really, lean into my own personal journey with that. Because to me, like my business is an extension of me. It's all a relationship with myself is all reflected everywhere else.
Yeah.
And so I sort of pivoted. I've always been someone, even in the fitness and nutrition, the mindset piece was also a significant piece of the puzzle for me, and bringing, into unity all the pieces of the human, the whole ass human, not just your workouts, not just your diet, and not just your mindset, not just your business, not just your relationship, but how all of those things ultimately sit on the foundation of the relationship you have with yourself. So if you work on that relationship that you have with yourself, you're going to see change in all of those areas. And when I ended up going through my divorce, it was a very dark, very difficult time. One of the most challenging times of my life, I can say for sure. I went through that, came out the other side, and I found the most amazing human to spend my life with. He is everything that I dreamt of. And I spent so many years thinking, I don't know if that's possible. I don't know if I can have that. But the truth is, I had made a list with one of my therapists about all of the things that I really wanted in an ideal relationship. And it was a struggle because I knew what I did not want. But I had a really hard time getting from there to this is what it would look like. And so with a little bit of help, I got there. And by the grace of the whole universe, totally knowing what I needed, this amazing human showed up about the minute I was available. It was the craziest thing. I was actually really not looking for a relationship at all. I was adamantly, I'm going to do this thing by myself. I got to work on me. I need space. I just need to be me. And this human was there, and there was just something to it. And so as much as I kept saying, I don't want a commitment, I don't want a relationship, like I couldn't deny it. There was chemistry. There was just some kind of connection that I couldn't deny. And so we explored things really slowly. And actually it's been 5 years, and it is the best. He's my person. He's my person full out. He's everything on that list that I dreamt of and more. And, we're 5 years in, we haven't had a fight. Like, we've had some disagreements, but what's the point in fighting? We love each other. We want to work together as a team. And so there's absolutely no reason to get defensive or be, against each other. We want to work together. And so knowing now what I know from this side of what's possible, and how it actually wasn't very difficult for me to make those perspective shifts, I want to show people, because that's possible for everyone. And it might be with your current partner, right? If you make those shifts, like you said, I have had clients and friends alike that have shifted themselves and transformed their relationship.
Yeah.
I've been the one who shifted and transformed myself, and it wasn't working. It became blatantly obvious that it just wasn't going to work. Because you can't do it for someone else. You can only, make change for yourself, and you can show up. But as long as you're waiting for someone else to change, it's not going to work, right? Yeah, got to take personal responsibility. And I call it radical responsibility. What are you going to do about it, right? Maybe you need better boundaries. Maybe you need to learn some improved communication skills. Maybe it's just not a fit anymore, and you just need to, pull up the big girl panties and make some difficult decisions. And yeah, I know that's scary. It's terrifying.
Absolutely. And that is exactly it, right? So it's that, what is it that's going to happen? And so I remember when I first started therapy, well, I shouldn't say first started therapy, but into finally making changes within the therapy. And so, and that was one of the things that I would hear all the time. It's like, you've changed. No, I'm actually standing up for myself. No, I'm actually setting a boundary. No, I'm not okay with that. Right. So it made a huge difference in terms of those things. And some relationships blossomed, while others, they completely fell apart, and these people moved out of my life forever. And so, but it's just whatever it is that takes, and whatever it is that needs. And like you said, in terms of clients, that's one of the things that I had. I had a client who was really struggling with the relationship. And when we were actually talking, that's one of the things. It's like, hey, well, I've told him that these are all the things that I need, and this is all the things. And it's like, okay, so what are you doing to change? What are you doing to shift? You want him to do all these things, but every time that he breathes in the wrong direction, you are literally down his throat. And so, and then she's like, oh, okay. And so then it shifted with like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm not really okay with that. I don't really like that. Set the boundaries, set whatever it is. And then became apparent that it was like, oh, okay, it doesn't bother me when he snorts when he laughs anymore. It doesn't bother me when, right? Because it was like that shift. And so then they were able to maintain and connect within that relationship. Whereas others, like you said, like it's just completely, that's not going to happen. We just need to go our own separate ways and move on and start fresh and do all the things. But being able to love ourselves, right? So like that, I think is probably the key. Or at least I think that it's probably the key, that when we can actually get to the point where we can enjoy our own company, then it doesn't matter what everybody else needs or everybody else wants. It's like, I can be who I want to be, and I'm okay with being here. And so I think that is another really huge impact on people and how to be able to get into that shift and kind of getting out of there, right? So one of the things that I think, if I'm not mistaken, one of the things that I think that I read about your book and your journey is being able to create some safety, right? So like when we have all this jungling going on and being able to create some sort of safety net around us. So can you give us an example of like, what are some of the things that we can do to be able to create safety for ourselves?
Yeah, I mean, so ultimately in my book, I explain what I call the spiral stopper method. And this is a strategy, a toolbox really of strategies and tools, because there is no one size fits all tool. Okay. Because when you're driving, when you're in the grocery store, or when you're at home by yourself, those are very different scenarios. And you may very well be triggered in any or all of those scenarios. So you are not going to be able to apply the same one solution across the board. So it's a toolbox so that you have a couple of things to draw from in a quick pinch, something that you're thinking ahead, right? You're planning for, because it's inevitable. We're going to have a moment. We're going to have an emotional reaction. We're going to have our backup. But how are we going to respond? We're going to plan that out so that we can respond versus react. And so the spiral stopper is basically building yourself a toolbox of strategies. And I think I list probably 40 or 50 in the book. You're welcome to add your own things to this. They are from as simple as high-fiving yourself. That's a Mel Robbins trick, to, spending some time in meditation, breath work, body work, somatic work. There's a ton of different strategies and tools and modalities out there. So it's honestly a fun adventure to sort of explore and try on these different things and see which ones really connect with you. And then as you get a little bit more practiced at getting out of the spirals, because when you're in the spirals, you're not firing on all cylinders. You're in fight, flight, response kind of mode, and you're not able to really call upon your critical thinking skills in the right way.
Thinking? What's that?
We have this amazing brain. The brain that's not who you are. You're not your mind. You're not your thoughts. You're not your emotions. And so getting this understanding of being the observer of these things also can help you to create a little bit of distance and stop the spirals. So I talk about that in my book as well. Ultimately, being able to navigate uncertainty is about creating that safety within. Regulating your nervous system is going to change a lot of things, because this is going to just allow you to feel your emotions, okay, instead of squirreling them away, avoiding them, shoving them under the rug, trying to avoid that discomfort at all costs, numbing out, avoiding distractions, all of those things. I did them all. Okay. Drank a lot of wine. I took up running, literally to run away and avoid. So I am well versed in all of the distraction avoid numbing techniques. Okay. So you were getting this firsthand information here. But once you can learn to actually shut down the thought and emotional spirals, they don't consume you as much. And then you have this beautiful space from which you now can become the creator, and you can choose intentionally what experiences you wish to create. You can choose what kind of responses you would like to have in certain scenarios, right? Some mental rehearsal to figure out, who am I going to show up? Because life is going to be a hot mess. There is going to be a whole lot of challenges and struggles and general shitstorms out there that you're going to have to navigate. But if you can approach them with this spaciousness, with this regulated nervous system, all faculties firing, you're going to be in a much better place to show up the way that you want, right? And have the outcomes and the experiences that you truly desire, those ones that your heart and soul are calling you towards, instead of just winging it and letting things just land where they may. Now you're in the driver's seat, right?
Yeah. And one of the things, like when you're talking about like being able to like all these things and taking that observer look, is one of the things that I will often tell my clients is like, so what would you say to your friend who's in this particular moment? Right. So because we stay calm, we have this outlook that's so much different. They are spiraling, and we just have like all this wisdom that we can actually spew on them to be able to help them to be able to get through to that other side. Like I know that I've got like that best friend, right? So I've got that best friend that can say, hey, just a minute, right? And vice versa. And it's just that importance of being able to like, so what would you tell your friend? Yeah. Janie, who's in this exact same situation. Janie's your best friend. And what would you say to her if this is what was going on and happening in this moment? And so then they have that ability of being able to take that observer look of like, oh, okay, well, this is what I would say. This is what I would do. Yeah. This is how I would respond. And this is how I would support them. And it's like, okay, so now do those things for you.
Yeah. Right? You can become your own best friend, right? And the spiral stopper is what's going to help you create that space. Because like I say, if you're in like survival response mode, like you're not critically thinking, right? You're not there. Your emotions are flooding. You're just yeah. So creating that space then allows you to think, okay, now what would I tell my best friend, right? Like that's a pattern interrupt. How can I reframe this? And how can I be a little bit kinder and more loving to myself? That relationship with yourself, I think, first of all, reminder, you're not broken, you're human. To me, I kind of don't like the word healing, because it makes you feel like there's something wrong that needs fixing. And I don't agree with that per se. I think that you're already whole. And as soon as you start embracing all of that wholeness, all of those things that appear broken or appear to need fixing actually just show up in a completely different light. They're all part of your humanity, and you are perfectly imperfect. Just as you are, you don't need to make big changes or be someone else. What you need to do is stop being someone else, because most of us are trying so hard to please other people or to show up perfect or to just be good enough. We're not actually being ourselves. So the more we can come back to who am I, build that relationship with self, ask the questions, right? Get curious about yourself. Look at, what are my triggers telling me? Yeah. Right? There's so much information available. What is my intuition telling me? Right? Do I trust myself to follow my intuition? How can I practice doing that in small ways? There's so many pieces to how we can start moving forward. And I would say the biggest piece of why my current relationship is, I can't even put it on the same comparison to any of the other relationships that I've ever had before, because I changed. Yeah. I came to the relationship knowing that I was whole, knowing that I was worthy, and knowing that I deserved the life that I wanted. And when you come with that, and then you find, you end up attracting someone else who also has that, because you see someone who is not there, you're like, I don't got time for this. No, thank you, right? Your boundaries, what you want, and what you don't want becomes blatantly obvious. And so you can find, and as if by magic, attract the things that you truly want and that align with you into your life. And it feels so much easier than trying so hard to measure up, to be perfect, to please other people, to make other people happy. I'm telling you, that is a losing game. And it is not worth the energy. And I think most people, the truth is, we want to be seen and heard and loved and accepted for who we are. Yeah. But I'll tell you what, if you're not showing up as who you are, but you're wearing a lot of masks, you're trying to perform, you're trying to prove yourself, you're not actually showing up as yourself. You're showing up as this projected version that you think that other person's going to like. And then they don't see the real, true, honest to goodness you, and you still don't feel seen and heard, right? So really finding your voice and allowing that to shine, and using it, setting boundaries, sharing your gifts, sharing your thoughts, all of those things allow you to have that experience you want, to be seen and heard and accepted. And if the other person can't,
Yep.
you know what? That's them problem, right? They might not be your people.
Exactly. And like, that is something that, so like going back 3 years in terms of the being able to start my podcast, right? So it's like, you've got like all these gurus that are saying, you need to do this and you need to do that, you need to do this.
Oh,
and it's like, if you show up at my class or you show up in my session, you're getting me as me. And so I don't do well with the reading and the scripting. And so my very first podcast episode, it was like, so it was somebody that I knew really well. And it was like, hey, so she's going to be my first person and I can trust her and I know all the things. Well, we're going through the list of questions. I've got a series of questions that I've already sent off to her so that she knows this is going to be my next question. And I'm a type A. So like that doesn't help. And so like, I've got all this list of things. So like, that was like going to help me stay on track and stay focused on all the things. And then so I asked her a couple of questions. Well, then she started going off and having like other conversations and like, and then I got to that perfect question of number 4. And it was like, she already answered that question. Now what am I supposed to do? So here I am live going like, oh, she asked that. Now what? Like my type A brain was going like, oh my God. But like, if we sit down at my kitchen table, we're having a conversation. We are just having so like this full unscripted conversation. I have people that come on and they're like, well, what are you going to ask me? I don't know. Based on like, based on what it is that's going on or what it is that's happening. But like 3 years ago or 4, and like almost 4 years ago now, that was like very scripted and I knew exactly what it was I was going to say, or at least I thought that I knew what I was going to say. But that doesn't help when the other person kind of goes off and like is trusting their own instincts and having these conversations. And so much so that I had a guest who had come on and we did the recording and we did all the things. Well, something happened to the recording and it didn't work. So like, it was like, we were talking about technology and it's like, it's wonderful when it's working.
Yeah.
And so like, we did this amazing interview and it was like so beautiful. And like, we had this enjoyable conversation and it was unscripted. So like, that was like, so like staying in that flow. And then it was like, oh, it didn't record. Now what? Like the world can't even hear this conversation that we just had. And so then it's same topic, same conversation, same person. But yet the next day we went off in other conversations. Yeah. Like, so where we were yesterday was not where we were today. And so when we did the broadcast and it actually did record and everything was good. We actually did a backup just in case something would happen again. Yeah. And so, but it was like, perfect. Like both conversations were perfect because of the way that it happened. But both people showed up exactly who they are. Right. So like, it was like, and that is so important. And so, and we get to do that with our own lives. And I love how you actually are able to help people navigate through that with your book, but also with your services of being able to help them figure out and navigate that part of who they are. And so having my background in mental health and addictions, in agencies where you have to follow like all these like certain things and you can't do certain things and there's like no connecting to that whole person or the whole being. So if I was working for one agency, because I worked for a number of agencies, and so when I worked for one agency, we were only allowed to deal with just the domestic violence. So I was working for domestic violence. So it was just allowed to deal with the domestic violence. Well, addictions plays a role in there. And then you've got relationships that are playing a role in there. And then you've got mental health, because like, you can't tell me that somebody who's abused isn't being impacted with their mental health, but we weren't allowed to deal with mental health because another agency dealt with those things. And so like, we've got all these different things and it's like, okay, why did we break up all these people? And so that is not the approach. And so when I would go, and so then I would work for another agency who I was working in the mental health. Well, while I was working in the mental health, we weren't allowed to deal with relationships because we weren't. And I'm like, really?
Yeah.
How does none of this work together, right?
My passion for really working with the whole ass human came from working with a business coach And really, thankfully, it worked out because she was also a marriage therapist before she became a business coach, because my relationship was a major block to creating the business success. I just didn't have the mental capacity to even really focus on my business when my relationship was in a destruction mode, right? Because we are a whole ass human. We can't just compartmentalize. Apparently men can do this. Maybe it's just women can't do this. I don't know. I've never been able to compartmentalize. All the things are so interconnected that there's just no way to look at one piece to the exclusion of all the others.
Yeah.
Right. And on my podcast too, I just want to say, I love the unscripted. I love the natural conversation. My podcast is very much the same. And I remember too, because I am a former accountant, when I first started recording, I had a list of potential questions, at least for backup in case I froze and didn't know what to say. But as it turns out, I've never had a problem with knowing what to say. So that has not been a problem. But yeah, I just think that it's always perfect. It's always divine, and it always works out with just the right things to share. And I think you could have the same conversation with the same person 10 different times, and you would discover different facets about that person. I mean, I talk about this same stuff about getting unstuck and about, my podcast and my book and the same things in my story. There's different pieces every time that kind of come out. So there's always a different little angle or nugget or perspective or something new, even sometimes that I discover about myself, even in my own storytelling. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I hadn't made that connection before. So sometimes it's even helpful for us to have a conversation. And actually, that's why I think mentoring is really crucial, important, to have someone in your corner, whether it be a therapist, a coach, a mentor, a good friend, your spouse, whoever that is, that's going to be a safe space for you to start unpacking some of those things and to have those conversations, because it's going to be really life-changing.
Absolutely. And it's just like all these different things. And so when something's going on, I can be calm, cool, and collected. But then when you get me with my best friend, well, then the emotions start to come up, right? So I was sharing before we came on that there was some concerns and complications with the pregnancy. And so leading into that, it was like, oh, okay, well, I'm with them. I'm calm, cool, collected. Everything's good. I'm just going to express what it is that is going on. But as I'm talking to my girlfriend, I'm like, blah, 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 right? Like, just I'm worried, I'm concerned. But like, while I'm doing all these things, it's like I can stay focused on all those things and be able to, and we do that, right? So as moms, as caregivers, as partners, like we can have all these things, and so that we can still stay focused and do the things that we need to be doing. Like, so somebody who, for example, who's shows up on an accident scene, right? Who's had some CPR or like some first aid training, they're going to kick into overdrive of like whatever it is that they need to do. But then after all that is finished, they still need to do that. Like, okay, what do I need to do? And what did I see? And how did I feel? And how did I respond? And so, like, as you said, like you share your story, you lived through all of those events. But when you start talking about it, it's like, oh, I forgot the sun was shining that day. Or, oh, I forgot that, oh yeah, I was getting completely soaked when like this particular event or something was happening, right? Because we didn't clue into and I could feel the clothing that was all wet and damp. But at the time when you're recounting it initially, but it's just being able to have that ability of, and not being able to like repetitively go, and so that you can go into another spiral, right? And we see that with people as well sometimes, right? It's like, well, okay, well, if I keep talking about it, then it's like, okay, but you just keep spiraling with that. So like, maybe we need to stop that conversation and we need to start this conversation. And so like I love how you have these tools that people can actually come in. And I have a client that says that all the time, is like, I've been dealing with my mental health for so many years, but I have this toolbox that I get to pull out. And sometimes those tools get rusty in there and we forget that they're there. And then it's like, oh yeah, I can use that breathing technique. Oh yeah, I can go for that run so that I can actually get the cortisol levels like moved out of my system, and like all these different things that we can do by just pulling into those tools. And I love that you put all these things into a book so that they can like literally carry this toolbox around with them, that they can just say, hey, just a minute. what was it that Christy said? I remember. She
Yeah.
was talking about this particular event or this particular situation, and I can go back and I can actually draw on that. So I love that.
Yeah, it's super helpful to have a toolbox because listen, when we're living in autopilot mode, it's just loops. You know, you're focused on trying to control things, and oftentimes you just end up perpetuating the things that you actually wish so desperately to be free of. And that's just not, it's just not the way. There's a better way, right? And like you kind of said before, like, that's just the way it is, or that's just the way I am. Those are terrible excuses for staying the same. If you're feeling maybe unmotivated, or you're stuck in the uncertainty analysis paralysis, right? You want to have this readiness before you start, or maybe you're even like burnt out from all the efforting. This spiral stopper tool is just going to help you create the space, right? So that you can decide, what are you going to do differently? How are you going to show up for yourself, right? What are the patterns that maybe need a shift? What are the beliefs that you've been carrying that, oh my God, they're not serving you, and they probably aren't yours to start with?
Yeah.
How can you unpack that? How can you reframe them so that you can get your faculties, your mind? I call it in my book, I call it the asshole mind, that like chattery, the part of you that just, it's like your RAS, right? Your reticular activating system. It's solely there for survival. And so it's not thinking about what's best for you. It's thinking, let's stay safe in the familiar comfort zone. And so we want to be able to shift out of that, so we can swap out some of those not so good patterns and habits for ones that are actually going to serve us and take us to the next level, so that ultimately we can create our own happy, right? Create the happy life, relationship, and impact business, whatever it is that you want to create in this life. All of those experiences, they're just waiting for you to show up and make it happen.
Absolutely. And I love that, because that's one of the things, like, so we just spent a couple weeks ago, we spent like 3 days in a conference with women who like had different speakers that would come in, and they would share like these other little components of everything. But one of the things that I loved about that is that like it all intertwined. Like they all, like, so somebody was talking about one thing, well then the next speaker would come on, and it was just like piggyback. And like, these are people that didn't even know each other, right? Like, and it just piggybacked. And some speakers were there like the entire time, so they can actually say, oh, when Christy was talking about this, then but some of them didn't show up, like hadn't had the opportunity to show up, but they were able to like still talk about something where somebody else would say, oh yeah, that's what Christy was talking about. And wow, like, this is so cool that Jane is actually talking about this when Christy was like, right. So like, it just it just all comes together and brings things. And so like, I love how you're able to do that with bringing all these things together in that Unstuck, of being able to share that experience and that connection of who are we and where do we want to go. So yeah. So tell me, like, do you have anything that you are offering people, or that you can, I know that you have your book, so I don't know if you want to talk about that or.
Yeah. So I do have, I hit my microphone. I do have a free chapter available of my book, actually. So I can drop you the link for that. But if you want to visit gtfu.ca, which is an acronym for Get the Fuck Unstuck, you can find a link there to download a free chapter if you want to check out whether the book is for you.
And it's gtfu.com?
Yeah, gtfu.ca, actually. I'm in Canada.
Yes, me too. I forgot about that.
Yeah. And then my podcast has the most amazing, inspiring stories of women overcoming. And I think, when we hear one another's stories, we can see ourselves in parts of those stories. And what often happens is we see someone who has overcome the thing that we're currently struggling with. We start to build a little bit more belief in what's possible for ourselves. And so my podcast is ultimately about creating a platform for those voices. And I want to just tackle all of those difficult topics that so many people are avoiding. The first season was like, we talked about so many different things, from capitalism to sex to pleasure to money to all of the different topics. Season 2 is actually focused entirely around one central theme, which is relationship with self. because that self-love and acceptance is the foundation for everything. As within, so without. I said that backwards. As without, so within, right? Everything is a projection of our relationship with ourselves. I mean, someone prove me wrong. Someone prove me wrong, right? And if you experiment with this, you may be thinking, she's off her rocker. That doesn't even make sense. Just try it on. I love to encourage people, try on different perspectives. Now you hear something, you're like, I don't believe that. That's okay. You don't have to believe it, but try it on for a moment. Expanding your perspective through just considering, what if? What would this perspective mean in my life? Try it on. And hey, maybe you're going to find some new ways of looking at things that are actually going to feel so much better in your body. So much more peace in your life will result in all that happiness. And honestly, I truly think choosing love, whenever there's an option to choose love for yourself, love for other people, you can't go wrong. And you're going to experience so much more of that peace and that good feeling that you deserve. All of those things that you've been seeking outside of yourself, you can create them within. And so that's like a little shortcut to the future now, because we only have now.
Yeah.
And ultimately we choose. We can drag our pain and suffering along with us and keep repeating those same stories and loops. And like I say, it's not your fault. If that's the habit and the pattern that you're in, it's not your fault. And I do explain a little bit more of, in a simplified sort of way, the neuroscience behind why this happens and why you get stuck in these loops. Because I think awareness is really important. If you want to shift out of it, you got to know why that's happening, right? How and why it's happening, so you can shut that shit down and take conscious control of your human experience.
And I love that. And I love that that's what your season 2 is, because that's what our 7th conference about is like. So it's Women Inspiring Women Conference, and it is the power of self-love. Yeah. And so like, I love that that's how you actually ended, in terms of like, this is where things are at with my conference, because like that is really that shift. And that really is that when we can actually get into that self-love and that self-acceptance and being able to be kinder to ourselves, then it's so much easier for other people to love us and to be kind to us, and to be compassionate and just all the way around. It's perfect.
Game changed.
Absolutely. So thank you so much. And so I've shared the link for anybody on Facebook and YouTube. And so it's so for anybody who's on the podcast, it's I'm just going to repeat it again. So gtfu.ca is the link. So definitely connect that way. And so wherever again that you are listening to this, there is all of Christy's contact information that you can actually reach out to her. And if you've loved this, please share it out. Let others know, because I think that this is a great conversation. And I often forget to say that at the end of the podcast, but like this one is like, seriously, send it out there, share it out there, because I think that this is a message that so many people need to hear, because that is the world that I live in terms of like helping my clients, is that because they get into that spiral. And it's like, hey, you're spiraling. So how are we going to get you to like stop? Like, where's the stop button? Where's that switch to be able to get that to be able to stop? So thank you so much for joining, and thank you so much for sharing your wisdom on this much needed topic. And looking forward to reading your book in full. So I can't wait to hear more. Okay.
Yeah.
So
thank you.
Bye everyone, and I will catch you guys next week for another Chatting with Wisdom.